Welcome to Private for Public, a deeper look at Maine's delicate and often complicated tradition of public access to private land. Brought to you by the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Hey everyone, this is episode 10 of Private for Public. I'm your host, Kris, and in this final episode of season 1, I'm excited to speak with John Simoneau, the New England chapter leader of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. John will share the importance of working together to preserve Maine's wild places and wild animals.
I'm John Simoneau. I was raised here in Maine, avid hunter and angler pretty much my entire life. Spent quite a bit of time archery hunting, rifle hunting for deer. I've got a 3-year-old bird dog that I'm working on teaching to be steady for birds. The grouse usually win. I spent quite a bit of time fly fishing growing up. I spent a little bit more time smallmouth bass fishing because I live in Durham and Chicago River's right there. It's convenient for me after work. I'm a volunteer chapter leader with the New England chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. The New England chapter is the traditional New England states. We have 2 chapter leaders from each state whose job is to promote the organization, promote opportunities for education and engagement of our members, and also work on policy issues surrounding public lands, access, opportunity, basically to support our sporting legacy in Maine and New England as a chapter. And then as a national organization, it is a North American organization, 20 years old. And currently represented in every state, and some very active members in Canada working on getting the official nonprofit status in Canada, which would allow us to have Canadian chapters. We have a Armed Forces initiative and a college program as well. The college program obviously are chapters at colleges that offer a lot of opportunity for sportsmen. And then the Armed Forces initiative came about because we found that a large portion of our membership, greater than the general population, are prior military engaged or currently military engaged. So AFI provides opportunities for them to be engaged with a new mission, being conservation, as they might leave the service and be looking for a new comrades and a group to work with and a new mission. Backcountry Hunters and Angler is about protecting our heritage of hunting and fishing through natural locations, working on wild public lands a lot, fisheries, waters, wildlife. Basically, without wild places, wild animals, it's kind of hard to continue our legacy of hunters and anglers. Here in Maine, we've had volunteers work with the IFW for the Next Step Hunter program. We provided mentoring. We've supported legislation for the Land for Maine Future Fund. We've been on the advisory. I'm on the advisory committee for the Kennebec Highlands Management Plan update. We've had folks sit on the Brook Trout Advisory Committee for fisheries updates with IFW. We've been providing a lot of input on the striped bass management conversation that's going on this summer. Any deer stakeholder group, Sunday hunting stakeholder group, and then we're providing hands-on projects. I was actually having a conversation with the IFW biologist this morning about a potential project for next summer. So trying to be out there and be engaged.
You guys sound very busy, that's for sure. One of the things I noticed is Backcountry Hunters and Anglers talking about very remote places, and obviously in Maine, we think of remote a little bit differently than they do out west. And obviously, you kind of hit on it, you're from Maine, so you understand the public access and how lucky we are to have the access that we do here, where western states aren't as fortunate to have the access that we do. But one of the things that kind of hit me was, like you said, that if we didn't have the habitat, if we didn't have that for wildlife, we wouldn't even have a place to hunt anyway. And that kind of struck a chord with me with your organization and having an understanding of how fortunate we are to have what we have here in Maine. And that's kind of why I called you. I was like, hey, listen, we really need to get this out there, because from our perspective, from not only the department, but from my perspective in the landowner relations, is to educate people on continuing to preserve the access that we do. And a lot of that is like, obviously, like your group talks about increasing pressures from growing population and over like sprawl, and we kind of deal with that on a daily basis. But like your organization is working a lot for that, trying to like preserve that. What are some of the things that you guys are working on right now?
Right now it is really, we came off a hard push for supporting the Land for Maine Future in the last legislative session, making sure that the Land for Maine Future, the laws that back it up, continue to allow hunter and angler access. We are engaged in the conversation about the National Wildlife Refuge in the High Peaks, which has received some initial pretty hard pushback, and I get it as a lifelong Mainer. We let us do it local first, but it does provide an opportunity for us to really look at how do we preserve this land, keep it permanently conserved. So we are engaged in that conversation, and we'll continue to be engaged in that. We are often called on by a lot of the other organizations to bring our members in to comment and support various projects, whether it's with the High Peaks Alliance, Trust for Public Land, and other organizations like that. We're often engaged on that. At this point in time, we're not the type of organization who is out there buying the lands. We're out there supporting those projects in the best we can, putting our people to provide expertise and assistance on those projects, and helping care for those lands through volunteers, through public land packouts and cleanups, and trying to do hands-on habitat projects. So it's really raising that voice and having that consistent conversation of these are important places for us. And it's interesting because, you think about the lands that are conserved. We have conserved a lot of the waterfronts on our rivers, right? There's critical habitat for that river, the quality of water. But how are we getting to that spot? We're getting on a private logging road, and we're using that private land to get to that public spot. And that's super important to us in our organization in Maine. And it's interesting when you have conversations with our peers in the rest of the country because it's very different. They're taking a state road and a county road to a piece of federal land. Here, in order to get to a piece of state land or federal land, we're really using resources of the private forestry companies.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because a lot of times, like in our outreach for our Outdoor Partners program, we're trying to reach, typically our department, like we have very good contact with the hunters, the fishermen, and snowmobilers and the ATVers, because they're always buying registrations, they're always buying their licenses. And what I try to tell people is, like, we need all of us to work together, whether it's the birders, whether it's the mushroom foragers, anything like that, because like you said, we all take the same path to get there. Have you heard about our Outdoor Partners program? For just $15 a year, you can help preserve Maine's tradition of outdoor recreation and support our private landowners. With over 17 million acres, roughly 94% of Maine's land is privately owned. When you become an outdoor partner, you help us provide critical resources to private landowners who help make recreating in Maine possible for the public. Your contributions go to signs, trails, law enforcement, educational programs, and events. You help maintain recreational access to hikers, bikers, wildlife watchers, hunters, anglers, trappers, recreational vehicles, and other explorers. You'll also be entered to win exclusive merchandise from our sponsoring businesses and organizations in our weekly drawings. Recent winners have received merchandise from Tacticam, Old Town Canoe, and North Maine Woods. Become an outdoor partner today to get involved and help us protect Maine's outdoors. Visit mefishwildlife.com/outdoor partners to learn more. I know that we had a conversation recently with a marine group that was talking about access for shell fishing, and we kind of sat back and we were like, well, really ours is Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, but then we kind of got thinking about it and we go, well, it's all about access. It doesn't matter if you're a shell fisherman and DMR regulates it. For us, it's all about access to fish and fowl on the ocean. So it could be a narrow walkway path down to the ocean that's going to be important for us for access. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of times, like we take for granted that we're operating on private land. People don't think about the logging roads in the North Maine woods or even in the western part of the state as being privately owned. They just think it's a public road. And I think you said it correctly. It's that we all have a part in it. We all need to take some type of initiative in order to do that, which your group is. They're kind of like spearheading, getting behind organizations to kind of preserve that, which is super important. I mean, it always comes down to money when you talk about purchasing access and stuff like that. But in Maine, it's very different where it's privately owned and the landowners have allowed us to have the access. And how are we going to maintain that? We were talking earlier today about what is the incentive for a landowner to keep their land open. And really, when it comes down to it, you really have to boil it down to there isn't any. They do it out of the kindness of their heart. And it's organizations like your own that can really start to uphold that and like give the landowner some support. And it may not be monetarily, but it may be physical labor that goes out there to help them out. I know for us, like I think I was first introduced to your group from our moose biologist, Lee Cantor. Lee had kind of mentioned you guys as helping out for our landowner cleanup day. And what are some of the things, like I know that like you guys have a stewardship program like within your organization, and what are some of the projects that you have done here in New England or outside in the United States that you can think of that are really supportive to landowners?
Yeah, so I mean, specific landowners, generally we have been a public organization. And I think this, actually coming here, meeting with you, one of the things I thought was like, when I end the day, I want to talk to Kris, like, how do we get more engaged with the landowners who are opening their lands, private lands for hunters and anglers. So we have done, and it does kind of cross that line of private lands, is we have worked with a lot of land trust in Vermont specifically. There is a lot of fishing access that are on privately conserved lands along riverfronts. And the Vermont state team, who's part of our chapter, have worked with those landowners to make sure there's not erosion at those water access sites, prune trees, designate trails, design future access points, and been heavily engaged with that. And so, we often talk about public lands, but, the other piece of the parcel is actually those privately conserved lands, which are very important. And, we have single-digit percentage of public land, true public land, where the state holds the fee and deed and on the land. But then, we haven't double that in lands that are permanently conserved with guaranteed access to hunters and anglers. So, we've worked more with those groups than necessarily private landowners directly. But I think it's a huge opportunity, and actually I think it would make a great conversation when I talk to my peers across the country and explain how a piece of woodland just outside of town is maybe the only access that somebody has for hunting, and how that private landowner allows that, and people are like, you mean a private landowner is going to let you hunt on their land? I'm like, absolutely, as long as we take care of it and we don't make it a problem for them, and we try to make it easy for them. We're frequently offering mentoring opportunities, and I'm the point of contact for Maine's chapter email. And often when people reach out or like, I want mentoring, and I start to dig around, like, okay, well, what do you have for experience? Why are you looking for mentoring? A lot of times it just boils down to, I've got my hunter safety, I hunted in another state, I don't know where to start here. Like, there's not a big piece of public land. Like, how do I find access? So we'll walk through, the state lands that are owned, and then we'll walk through the lands that are conserved using the Department of Conservation's GIS mapping. And then we'll start to talk about, okay, now let's look at, here's some large private parcels that are in your area. What's the ownership structure? Is it gated? Is there a sign at the gate that maybe says hunters and anglers are welcome? One of my biggest finds this summer, I've got a bird dog, and I'm trying to get her exposure to more grouse because they're winning. And driving 3 hours, 4 hours to go up to the North Maine woods, to go up above Aquasic, to all of those lands, just takes too much time out of my family time. So how do I do that? And I started looking for lands more closer to home that are being actively managed, that are of large parcels, and started using forestry maps and habitat maps and land ownership lines, and started identifying like, okay, here's a bunch of opportunities. And I was pleasantly surprised to roll into one, and there's a gate and there's a sign and it says, hunters and anglers are welcome, no camping, no fires, if you can use an ATV, stay on our road, and oh, by the way, we're going to open the gate on October 1st. Please respect our roads, and we'll close it on December 15th. It's like nirvana. And there's even an email from the land manager saying, if you see any issues, here's how to contact us.
I have a feeling I know where you're talking about because I think I made the sign. I seriously think I made the sign.
You might have. It might have actually been in an old patrol area. But, that's great to see. And it'd be great to see more of those opportunities and more of those relationships out there. Some of the lands that I've found the best access to recently have been private lands that I've found have been really well managed. One of them actually had a stream crossing that had been closed, and there was restoration activity in a new bridge. And I know that it is also on the Atlantic Salmon Federation's waterway list of areas that they're trying to remove dams and improve the habitat. So, private land owners are doing great things too, and it's good to recognize them and good support them. And from my perspective,
is that something like my wheels were kind of turning when you were talking about that, and some of the conversations that we've had? Has Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, have they done anything with part of your mentoring program, but teaming them up with landowners to be stewards of their land to gain access? I mean, there are some programs out there. There's some private other organizations that have started similar things that they teach the hunters to become stewards for the landowner. Do you see that moving forward, with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers?
A formalized program, we haven't talked about that yet, but that is absolutely part of the mentoring conversation. When that angler, hunter or anglers, I'm looking for access, and especially hunters, that's the biggest challenge. Often it's okay, here's a landowner, here's how to find their name through the tax rolls. Here's how you might connect with them. You may have to go ask at the local store if somebody knows them. You may have to knock on the door. Here's how to approach them when you knock on the door. And realizing you knock on the door, the first answer might be no. They may already have nieces, nephews, cousins, brothers, whoever who are out there rifle hunting, but continue the conversation. Maybe a small game. Maybe that first step is to say, hey, can I go out there and squirrel hunt? And then when you finish with your squirrel hunt, send them some pictures of the squirrels and the trash you picked up. Ask about turkey hunting. They might look at turkey as a pest. And the sportsmen are growing to love the turkey now, but a few years ago, people were like, I get turkey in my land. Yeah, you can go chase the turkeys if you want. So, it may be that you can only archery hunt there. And make sure you show the landowner respect. Ask, where do you park? How do you not damage their land? Make sure the gates are back in the position you found them. And if you're questioning if a gate should be open or closed, you reach out to that landowner and say, hey, should this gate be closed? Or I notice this gate's working hard. I'm going to bring in some WD-40 and a wrench and see if I can adjust this gate for you. It's often that informal, not necessarily formal program. It's just creating that ethic, making sure that if you're having tree stands in there, you have an agreement with the landowner. Yes, you can have tree stands there. You can't attach anything to the tree, and they need to be out by a certain time frame.
Yeah, I definitely see the benefit of that as moving forward. Land is changing hands. I know specifically that location that you're talking about. Those are people that moved here from out of state. They didn't understand how Maine access was. We worked with them specifically on their access, which they totally want people to use it. Their biggest problem there that they had over the years was people causing damage in the springtime, and that was actually one of our Outdoor Partners projects that we worked with them on their signage and helping them with their gates so that they didn't have the damage in the springtime. And it's just a huge success story. They bought the property as a piece of land because they loved brook trout, and they didn't grow up with brook trout in their state. And for them to go above and beyond, to see landowners that want to do that, and really they're looking for eyes and ears that are hunters out there and anglers that can kind of provide them support because that's something that they're not really used to in the state that they're from. And I do see huge dividends in that, and I think that moving forward, like in our state, that's going to continue to have the access that we do, because that's going to show landowners that hunters and anglers still care about them. And really, that's kind of the answer to the question when you ask, like, what do landowners get for leaving their land open? And we always suggest, like, hey, go, just like you said, go talk to the landowner. Yeah, it may be a no. But you know what? If you're kind to them, they may call you up, leave them a card, and leave them your number, and they may call you back someday and say, "Hey, you know what? I'd love to have you on the property." We always get calls from landowners or agricultural people that have problems with nuisance animals. They get into their crops and cause damage and stuff, and we've talked about our mentorship program and stuff like that. And that's kind of why I brought that up with your stewardship program, if that was something that you guys were looking into the future, because I can see like where you guys have a large group and a large organization that you guys could kind of run with that for sure, and see where you could go with that. How many members do you have in the state of Maine or the New England chapter?
So in Maine, we're probably about 300 members in Maine right now. Nationally, we were about 30,000 nationally. We were growing pretty fast in Maine up until 2020. Without a lot of public events, we've had to shift models, and we found that we're struggling to get people returned and re-engaged. So it's been a slow growth back. At one point, we were on a pretty good trajectory to have a lot more membership in Maine, and hopefully we can get that going again. And I think a lot of organizations are having the same issue. I chat with the folks from Rough Grouse Society and Net Wild Turkey, and everyone's having kind of the same, a little bit of a setback in engagement and membership.
What are your target audience like? How are you going about getting them engaged, and how would you, like, if someone wanted to become a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, how would they do that?
So membership is through the website. We do have a membership portal on the website. It's $35. You get it for a quarterly magazine. There's almost always incentives for the membership. Right now, I think the incentive is entry into a drawing for a decked drawer system, and it's a 30% off from a fitness program by Mountain Tough Fitness, which is a Bozeman, Montana company that has an app that has variety of workouts and workout types, very focused on folks that are in the mountains, hunters, and also other mountain travelers. That's a program I use. It's pretty intense, pretty good stuff. We also do events. So you mentioned Lee. Lee helped us last year. We did an event with the Hunt Maine crew. They had filmed a moose hunting video in Maine. They had a pretty unique ending to it. I don't want to spill all the beans, but look up the Hunt Maine crew, the Maine moose hunt. We did a live debut of that show in Brunswick. And then we did a panel after, and Lee joined us for that panel. And so a lot of our membership gets picked up through events like that. BHA was also about pint nights. So lots of times in Maine, we try to pick a theme. Like we'll do one around turkey season. We'll do it at a venue where we can be outside and we can use turkey calls and do a little bit of turkey calling competition, or just call for fun and get lots of attention because everyone's like, what's that noise coming from over there? What are these guys doing? We certainly are at events. We try to attend some of the shows and sportsman shows, things like that. L.L. Bean has been a corporate partner off and on, so we've appeared at some of the L.L. Bean events. But the biggest bumps we actually get in membership is usually when we show we've done something. And so if we go through a big legislative year, last session, the big primary session, I think I tracked 28 different legislative bills. And when we did our legislative wrap up of here's the bills we tracked, here's the ones we commented on, that's when I actually saw a bump in our membership is when we sent out the notice of that, and people who were on our mailing list who maybe submitted a comment on one of those pieces of legislation and ended up on our list, they then said, all right, these guys are doing great things, let's join. We've seen bumps after we've done projects. Last year we did a project with the department out at Swan Island. So after we publicized that project, it was a very basic project of just helping the department open up the trails out there, and had a lot of conversations about the deer, the volume of deer that are out there, and future opportunities for hunters to maybe help the habitat on those lands. So it was great. We worked. We also talked habitat and opportunities and how we could be partners in the future for the management of that site. And following that project, we put up a little bit of a news blurb, and people were like, "Oh, that's great! Like that's the type of thing I want to support. Maybe I'll join." So that's my preferred way to pick up members, and that generally is actually the more productive way to add members, even over a pint night, which sounds like a lot more fun.
It does sound fun. I think I kind of want to join. So what are some of the future projects you think that like you have in the boiler room right now?
So
anything?
Right now, talking with Department of Conservation and Sarah, the biologist who's working, IFNW biologist who's working with Department of Conservation, they have a fence removal project that is a potential up in Skowhegan on a parcel up there. Which is something is interesting. Western chapters are doing all the time because antelope and some of the western animals really struggle with fences, and often isn't an issue here in Maine. But they've kind of observed this piece of fence is not really helping that site. So that was a piece that just came up actually the last couple days. I've been having a conversation with Sarah off and on since the fall. We just needed to get through hunting season and holidays, and now we can start to nail down some projects. So we're talking with that. She has some other ideas. We've talked with, I've had quite a few conversations with the Department of Conservation, offering with Kennebec Highlands, there's a couple challenged access locations. And the offer's been on the table, and we've had conversations off and on. Timing hasn't been right, but of us taking on one of those sites and seeing what we can do to help. If it's a gate helps that landowner, abutting landowner, then all right, let me fundraise for a gate. Like as long as we have a place to park, most backcountry hunting anglers are like, great, I can park there, I can walk in. Super. Generally we're more mobile, less about the ATV access and motorized access, and more about getting out there on our own feet. So we've had that offer on the table. Still actively engaged with the folks for Kennebec Highlands, personally, representing the chapter, but that's kind of a personal project I've worked on quite a bit. We talk with your manager for the public lands quite a bit, Ryan, about opportunities on the WMAs. I have the emails for pretty much all of the various regional managers, and we're digging for projects right now. Because that's a way to be engaged. So I think the one I think that is going to happen will be the Skowhegan one. And if people are interested, follow us on social media. We have a Backcountry Hunters and Anglers New England chapter Facebook page and Instagram page. You can email me at maine@backcountryhunters.org, and I can make sure to notify you of those projects as they come up as well.
Very cool. It's funny because I was looking at the website and I saw the people rolling the barbed wire fence out west, and I didn't even think about it here in Maine, like being a project that you could work on. But obviously, like you see it all the time when you're out in the old farmland and stuff. There's always barbed wire fence or square fencing out there that kind of gets left behind, and at some point it's probably not any good. And time to roll it up.
Right.
That's a very cool project.
Yeah, we've talked, there's some other longer term initiatives. You mentioned, easements and monitoring for private land, and the same issues exist with public land. And I know there's a long-term opportunity that we've been discussing about, can our members adopt basically a WMA or another piece of conservation land and manage and look for those incursions onto that site, whether it's ATV access that's not part of the plan, whether it's landowners storing material on the land, whether it's a trash dumping spot. We have as you know, those lands are given, you know, the funding for those lands require that we protect it and we manage it, and there's opportunity that, you know, given the state resources, that we could use our members and say, hey, we love these spots, and we can adopt them. I know I bug my regional folks as I find things and pin them on my Onyx and take a picture and email and say, you know, I noticed this. Can we do something about it? I'm willing to, you know, make it happen. Like, you know, and sometimes it's just small. It's just like a dumped refrigerator or a dumped air conditioner, and be like, I've got the resources. I got a friend who'll come help me. I'm going to come pick this up and get that out of there, but I just want you to know. You know?
We can definitely get you signed up for our landowner cleanup day. That's not a problem. This year we're around our average about 30 ton of trash in one day,
Yeah.
which is pretty staggering if you think about it. This is the Talking Trash segment, where we're going to talk about illegal dumping as one of the leading causes of private land being shut down for public access. On this episode of Talking Trash, let's talk about Earth Day. On Monday, April 22nd, it's Earth Day. We all can make a positive change for this amazing planet and the state of Maine. Each year, Earth Day takes on a particular theme, and this year, it's Planet versus Plastic. Check your local communities for cleanup events coming up on Earth Day and town cleanups this spring. For example, check out Keeping Belfast, Maine Beautiful on Saturday, May 11th. The event states to grab your friends and help clean up the streets of Belfast. This local event gathers hundreds of volunteers that clean up trash that people have dumped along the side of roads and has reared its ugly head since the winter snowmelt. Most common dumping sites and litter are roadside, so this is a great way of thanking landowners in Maine by picking up a little trash. Take a minute out of your time to look in an area for any cleanup days that may be coming up this spring. You may be the one that helps a landowner out and keeps land open to access in the future. I mean, we always see the stuff dumped on the landscape, and I mean, I've talked to clubs, snowmobile clubs, ATV clubs, or hunting groups, and they're like, we're clean up all the time. We don't need one day to do it. And I'm like, well, that's what it's going to take. Like, we set up one day that we can have the dumpsters ready and everything like that. But obviously, like, doing it on a long-term basis is how we're going to solve the problem, because it becomes a problem when somebody sees it. And if we can get it before it becomes a problem, that's the best way. So I do appreciate it. I mean, you guys are moving way ahead. It sounds like what you guys are doing is really great, and you are representing the sportsmen and women of the state of Maine very well in your endeavors. And from the department's perspective and the Warden Service, we really appreciate that, and appreciate you putting that message out there that being a sporting public and being a good user group goes a long ways with the landowners. And like I said, I just wanted to thank you for that, and appreciate you coming in today, John, and kind of spreading the word about Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to come in here and talk with people who are considering the same risks that we think about in the back of our mind with the private land and our current access to the private land. That provides a huge opportunity. You know, I wear my branded shirt says public landowner. Like in the rest of the country, the public land is my access. But here in Maine, you know, the public access, I should almost have a public access shirt, because that is the majority of our hunting lands in Maine.
We might work on that. That would be a good one. We should do that. We should do a public access shirt. That'd be really good. I like that. It's funny, you know, like like some of the projects that you guys have worked on out west. I mean, obviously the corner crossing thing is a big deal. I've been following that a lot. We are fortunate enough that we don't have that here, but we're also unfortunate that we don't have as much block management land or federal land like they do out west. But unfortunately, the way their landscape is with the checkerboard, like the ceiling, the corner crossing that's a really, really big deal. Like, I was following that because it's a lot of land rights, and who owns the air? That's always the question. It's like, I mean, to me, I thought that the guys were doing things right and on the up and up, but it's definitely interesting topic to follow for sure. And I think there was I think they did an article about it. I looked there's a blog recently, like January 11th or so,
Yeah.
in your Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Yeah, the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers has been heavily involved. It started with, I talked about our chapters being the drivers of policy and local issues. It started with our Wyoming chapter, like really saying we want to support these guys. And it's accelerated now to, it's a North American goal to continue this conversation about the blocked checkerboard lands. And there's actually some press releases this week with some additional information about our kind of intervenor status in some of those court cases. It's a huge opportunity out west. We have such a different landscape here, though, in Maine. When they were splitting those lands up to homestead those lands and making those blocks out west, our lands were already privately owned by timber barons who were, fighting over water rights to decide do the logs go down the Penobscot or the St. John.
Yeah.
Right? It was already private
Right.
land when the government divided up those lands and created those homesteads and those things out west. So it's such a different perspective, and it makes a fun conversation when I meet with the Western chapter leaders and we talk about these issues.
I bet. I mean, I know talking with my counterparts in other parts of the country and North America, to talk, I mean, very closest states, I mean, obviously Vermont, New Hampshire, and Mass, they understand kind of a little bit, but it's still different. Like Maine is very unique when it comes to public access on private land, and you talk to the people out west, and man, it's like they can't comprehend that. It's just not even, it's foreign to them.
Right.
And similar to us when we think about the checkerboard and corner crossing.
Right.
But for us, like here in Maine, and it is funny because that's a big fight out there, and hopefully we don't get to the point where we're in a big fight over here, and hopefully we can continue to just maintain what we've had, and like you guys are doing, educating the new people that want to come into this type of sport, and teaching them the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's huge. That we're as a national organization, we've been very involved with the Sunday hunting conversation, right? And when the conversation of last legislative session happened here in the working group, and we had the landowner survey, it was a pretty big gut check for us as an organization to put together our position statement on that, because while Sunday hunting provides opportunity, which is a huge part of our mission and values, the loss of access if private landowners start to close off more lands or change to a leasing arrangement or things like that, that would be a reduction. So it's a tough conversation, and it's interesting when we had the national calls about that issue of having that perspective of, yes, it's an opportunity for us to hunt on Sunday, but we may lose other opportunities for access. And how do we balance that and work through that? And it's going to be a longer term conversation. It's not going to be a quick legislative fix.
I mean, I've been hunting now be about 35 years or so now, and it's funny for me because I see both sides of it. I've talked to a lot of people about it, but I also see the point of we've got it really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's working. It's been working, and I don't want to see it lost.
Yes.
In the end.
Right.
But it is definitely an interesting topic of conversation for sure, and everybody has their own side of it, and it's definitely interesting. But when you see what the landowners said, and when we are here to support landowners, especially in my current role, and game wardens in general are supportive of landowners. That's what our mission is, to help them, and to see what they said overwhelmingly, we have to support them.
Right.
So.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, John. I
you.
appreciate you coming in, and it's a great conversation. And anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the partnerships we've had with the department over the years, and look forward to more opportunities to work together.
Thanks again. Thanks for listening to the first season of Private for Public. We've learned a lot about partnerships, hard work, and generosity that goes into keeping Maine's private land accessible to the public. Everyone from hikers, bikers, riders, and wildlife watchers to hunters, anglers, and trappers and beyond should remember that open land is a gift, not a given.
There are always more stories to share about the impact of private land access to outdoor recreation. While you're waiting for Season 2, prepare for the 8th season of Fishing Game Changers with Emily McCabe, coming soon. We'll take a look behind the scenes of Maine Fish and Wildlife to continue exploring the unique and diverse work done by department staff across the state. In the meantime, do your part to help protect Maine's tradition of access to private land by being a responsible land user and showing your appreciation and support for Maine's private landowners. Visit mefishwildlife.com/outdoor partners to find out more about how you can get involved and become an outdoor partner.